If we want to work with JSON in Monet database, we can use JSON data type. I will first create one table. And this table will have only one column, and that column will use JSON data type. And then I will place some JSON code inside of that table, like this one. And then we can read from our table. But if we use a select statement like this, then we would get the whole text. So this is the whole text of JSON code, but usually we want to read just some part of it. And for that, we have to use some specifiers, and such specifiers are called JSON path, and they are used in Monet database inside of JSON filter function. So I will now add here one such statement. So we are using JSON filter function that will use JSON itself as the first argument, and second arguments are specifiers that are telling what part of that JSON to use. Now this time I will just use a $sign. That means take the whole JSON code. So when we run this, we would get everything. But if we want to be more precise, we have to use different specifiers, something like this. In this case, I'm telling go from root. So dollar is a root of hierarchy. Then we go to store, then to bicycle, and then to color. If you look in our code, then we would see that we are going from store to bicycle to color. So we would read this color red. So when I run this, I will just get a color red. We can also use specifiers like this one. This means look for title wherever it is. So wherever we in hierarchy we find a title, we would read from it. So if I run this, I will find both this title and this title. And if there is, for example, here title, if this was the title element, we would read it also. So we would get all the values for title, but we can limit such search. For example, I can use again 2 dots, but this time I will limit my search inside the store. So we are looking for any color in hierarchy but below the store, and we will just find this one color. So when I run this, I would get again color red. I will now clean my screen. I will now copy JSON code as a comment inside of our terminal, just so we can see what we are working on. And then I will run one statement that is using JSON filter function, but it is not using JSON path. It just has a number as a second argument. So when we run this, we would get everything that is inside of this store object. And this is because our JSON has two objects, has a store object and deploy object. And with 0, we would just read the content of the first object. Then we will run this second statement. This second statement is reading from an array. Inside of our JSON, we have a book array with 2 elements. This is the first element, this is the second element, and with 0, inside the brackets, we would read just the first element. So we would read title, door, and price 8.95. Then we can read several elements from our array at the same time. In that case, we have both 0 and 1. And this time, between book and open bracket, we don't have a dot. Here we had a dot, but here we don't have a dot between. So when I run this, I would just get first element and second element. Then we can go inside of some of these elements to read their content. This time we would go to first element, and then from there we would read the value for a title. So when we run this, we would just get the door. Then it is possible to read all of the values from the first element. So with a star, we would read values from the first element of our array. So we have just values as a result. And we can also read everything from our array. In that case, we are using this syntax with a star. So when we run this, we would get both 2 elements. I will now clean my screen. We will now see some other functions beside JSON filter that we can use for JSON. First one is JSON text. This function will accept 2 arguments. First argument is some JSON, and second argument is some string. And this will concatenate all of the values from this JSON with this string as delimiter. If we skip this second argument, in that case we would get the same result, just we would use default separator, which will be space. The next function is JSON number. JSON number will take the number from this singleton object and it will return that number as a double. It will also work on a singleton array. So if we have a statement like this one here, we would also get 4 as a double, and we can use just the number written as a string like this one, and this function will also work. There is another version of this function which is called a JSON integer. Now be aware here that integer has to be written with small letters inside of double quotes. And in this case we would again got a 4, but this time our number will be returned as an integer, and a JSON integer can also accept a singleton array or just a number. I will now clean my screen. There is a class of JSON functions that will give us some information about our JSON. For example, this JSON isObject function will investigate whether this is an object, and this is obviously an array, so this will return false. But if we provide an object to this function, then it will return true. We can also use similar function JSON isArray, which will check whether some JSON code is an array. So this is array, so this will return true. We can also check validity of our JSON code with the function JSON is valid. So if this JSON code is valid, we would get a true value. Then we can see how many top elements is there inside of our JSON, and we have only 2 elements. We have store and employee, so we would get the result 2. We can also see what are the keys for those two top elements. So the keys are store and employee, and we can also read the values for these 2 elements, these 2 top elements, and for that we are using this function JSON value array. I will now clean my screen. For the next example, I will create a new table, and this table will have 2 columns. First column will be of the type double, and second column will be of the type club. I will run this, and then I will enter some values inside of our table. These are those values. So we can now read from our table just to see how our table looks like. So the first column has numbers 1 to 3, and the second column has those same numbers but as strings. And now we will use our JSON function. This JSON function will use these double values or these clubs, and it will concatenate them as a JSON array. This function is called a JSON to JSON array, and here we have such statement. So we will use number column, and then we will concatenate all of the values inside of one array, and the same thing is with these clubs. But in both cases, we would get a result that is of club type. So this is a JSON array of club type, and this is the same thing. I will now clean my screen. I will now talk about UUID data type. First, I will create a new table, which has a 1 column of UUID data type, and then I will insert the value inside of this column, and this value will be a string because UUID data type is based on a string data type, so we can insert a string in it, but we can also insert a correct data type. In this case, I would use a string, but I will have this prefix UUID in front of it. So now this is a correct UUID data type, and this will also work. We can read from our table. This is our result. Now, if we want to check whether some value is of UUID data type, we have a function for that, and that function is called sys.isAUUID. So if we run this, we would get true and true. Now, when we want to create a new UUID, we have also a function for that, and that function is sys.UUID. This will create a totally new UUID. Now, UUID is a really big number. It has 32 digits, it has first 8 hexadecimal digits, then 4 hexadecimal digits, then again 4, and then 12. So it is really big number, and there is a huge probability that this is the first time ever in the whole world that this number is created. So these are really unique numbers, and we are using them to label things. For example, we can use them as a synthetic key. Now, if we want to cast some string as a UUID, we have a usual oscillator. We can use cast function like this one. So we are casting this string as UUID. Then we can use convert function to transform a string to UUID like this one. And as we saw earlier, we can use this unary operator UUID as a prefix to transform this string to UUID.